Good afternoon, Andre. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. I'm really glad we could put this together. And I appreciate you accommodating me. There's a bit of buzziness in the background because of the restaurant, but a little buzz is good. It's beneficial.
Of course. So for everyone listening in, I'm sitting with Andre Gerschel. Okay, and we're actually live in Kismet in Dubai Opera. Okay, so we're in a live restaurant. So if you do hear some music in the background, it's because it's a very busy place. And if you haven't heard this before, make sure you come and check it out. I'll give you some details towards the end to let you know the locations and how you can visit this amazing restaurant. Okay, but first of all, Andre, welcome along. Thank you very much. Just give us a brief introduction to who you are, where you're from, just a bit of background on yourself.
Sure. Look, I've been in the UAE in Dubai for about 10 years. Somewhat recently, I took over a company from the founder of the company, Baker and Spice. And even more recently than that, I launched a very important passion project and side project called Kismet, which is sort of like a soul food plus cocktail bar, right adjacent to Dubai Opera, right outside on the plaza level. I'm born and bred New Yorker. That I feel like most people can get that by my very heavy accent. When I first moved out here, I think one of the reasons that drew me out to this market and why I took the jobs and made the career decisions that I made is because what's exciting about Dubai is there's still so much of the canvas of the city which remains unpainted. Whereas in, I think, a lot of the cities that we grew up in, it tends to be more so that things are decided. You know, if one space is set for a restaurant and that's what the local, pub is, that's what the local Indian street food place is, that's what the local grill is, it has to kind of remain that way. Whereas in Dubai, you don't just talk about one space, you talk about how to develop a suburb, how to develop a new city within a city, how to develop a neighborhood, a district, and I think that dialogue is what attracted me to Dubai and what has kept me here.
Very good. And before that, so if we go back to all the way back to childhood, is this something that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I had this conversation recently with somebody about why I decided to come out here, and one of the interesting things is that I initially was gunning for a job in London, and I had just graduated from school. But I think before we fast forward, sort of midway to that point, I think at one point I wanted to be a karate instructor, like every boy at some point. I was really into like gemology and cave diving, which was a very specific profession for I guess a young kid. I think I always liked the idea of working with my hands. Whatever job I was going to do and whatever job I've settled in, it was always going to be one that was very active, required just enough attention deficit disorder and just enough energy and a great sense of urgency. And so I recognize that most of the things that I enjoyed doing as a kid are somewhat promoted in the skills and effectively the things that are required to make you a good restaurateur today. I loved restaurants from a fairly early age. My first restaurant job I was a bellboy at around 15. It was a family friend's hotel. And I remember particularly during that time period, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the interaction. I think in many ways, hotels, restaurants, nightclubs, they offer a tremendous and accidental stage for human interaction, which I really enjoy. And I think most people who work in our business, they like working with people. But it is a very tough business. I'm sure anyone that's worked in restaurants will tell you it is a very hard job. It's crazy hours. It's never closed. You don't stop. It's a relentless pursuit. You need to enjoy that pace, and you also have to recognize that you can't do it for very long. Most restaurateurs sort of peak by 45, 50. It's hard to do these hours much past that.
Yeah, I definitely understand the point you're getting at there, because from the age of 14, my first ever job was actually working in a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
That was my work experience. And I then went on to train to be a chef. I worked in fine dining restaurants as a pastry chef for many years. I think I did in total 10 years service in restaurants.
Back of house or front?
Back of house.
Wow, tough. Yeah, real tough.
Chef. Yeah. So it got to the point where I took the executive decision of what's the longevity of this? How long can I put up with this? So I went from cooking in restaurants to building restaurants. So kind of staying in that same industry, however, just on a different element. But yeah, I mean, I do respect the hard work that goes into it. But I mean, in terms of obviously your education, it wasn't necessarily hospitality related, would it?
Well, I'm actually a law school dropout, so to speak. I went to culinary school, so I was back of house first before I was front.
Okay.
I just realized I wasn't as good a cook as I am a talker.
Yeah.
But I do love cooking, and it's always been a part. I went through culinary school and worked for about 8 years on the line, which was really hard. But I think to be a good restaurateur, you really have to have done every job. There's no shortcuts in this business. And there's something I appreciate about that, because I think a lot of the jobs that my contemporaries and people my age are looking at right now is a little bit get-rich-quick stuff. And there's just no shortcut. You have two choices once you join hospitality. You can be either a somewhat decently paid employee or a terribly paid owner. And at some point you have to hit that stage where you decide, okay, well, I'm going to open my own place, pay myself no salary, and put every single dollar I can scratch up into something I want to do after you've learned how to do everything that you think you want to do. Or, I want to join a big hotel company and try and work my way up and create sort of a more corporate angled career. But when it comes to independent restaurants, everybody works in them, or independent hospitality, because one day they want to be an owner. That's the only, that's the only incentive for doing what we do. But from an educational background, I went to university and graduated, and I actually did graduate at the very end in law school, but I was doing cooking jobs all throughout. Sometimes to pay tuition and make ends meet and buy books, and sometimes to afford, to buy pretty girls' drinks and all the other reasons and incentives that we have for working for the dosh, as they say. But I think that was, that's sort of the angle of my career. I don't know if I ever knew that I was going to end up exclusively in restaurants. I always had a thing for hotels too, but who knows? There's still enough time left.
Do you know, it's a good point you made there as well, because not only can you buy pretty girls drink, you can also cook for pretty girls as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a good date is when you cook for your partner. That always seems to go over quite well.
There's too many millennials nowadays that don't know how to operate a kitchen, right? Or
well, they don't have a lot of incentive to learn how to do it. It's much easier to start an app or become Insta famous. The return on investment is much better there. But
I think the point you made as well, get rich quick, is very much something that's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds at the moment. But when you talk to anyone that's done relatively well in this industry as well, it's been a long term. It's been a long term game.
Here's the amazing thing about the restaurant business. The success stories actually read fairly the same. I worked really hard for really long and got really lucky. And that's it. That's the entire thing. There's no I discovered a new... I mean, that's more food products. Like you created an amazing, nut butter, or you created a new gluten-free pizza experiment or whatever. But the people who do well long-term, it's just hard work forever until you're tired, and then keep working hard, and that's it, and just shut up and work, and that's sort of, I think I'm one of the last kind of generations of cooks that grew up under that. Now it's so different. The incentives to become a cook are so diminished. Every job pretty much pays better than a line cook now, with no guarantee of becoming successful. So I understand why I think a lot of people have left, or why the industry has a problem now attracting entry-level and mid-level talent. That's like a big issue that you see in tons of newspapers across the world right now, is how to get people excited about the cooking and restaurant industry. It's very hard.
Yeah, sure. So if we go back to working in New York, how would you say working in New York kind of taught you what you know now? So what sort of lessons did you learn in New York that you were transferred into kind of your success?
So I think, look, I've also been very lucky. I've had some great mentors along the way, really, really good ones, and that makes it a massive difference. And that's the first thing. And so, I mean, to be successful in this business, yes, it's hard work, but there are two main ingredients, and one is a sense of urgency, and the other is the idea of perpetual motion. Don't stand in one place for too long. And those two things, 95% of the time, if you have them, you should do well. But the other amazing lesson I learned in New York from one of the GMs that I worked there is, every time you walk onto the floor of a hotel, a restaurant, a nightclub, I want you to imagine every single person in that room is holding a sign that says, please tell me how important I am. And the minute you approach customer service from that angle, remind me how important I am, as if they're holding a giant sign. Make me feel important. Is pretty much 98% of what I believe the hospitality business is about, is ingratiating yourself to a great extent with those people being customers and guests. And I think if you could cover that initial base of make me feel important, that's a lot of the battle.
I think the thing is with eating out nowadays, it's you've kind of have to look at the whole restaurant business and say, well, why am I going out to eat? Am I going out to just taste good food, or am I going out to create an experience and have a good time? You know, there's so many restaurants that you can go to where it creates such an amazing experience, and the servers are so good. It's almost like you don't have enough money to give them for a tip. But then you leave some restaurants. I mean, I won't name names, but there's been some restaurants that I've been to which have spent millions and millions and millions on their fit out, and then it comes to the service, and you question the stuff about, oh, what should I try? Give me some hints. Give me this. Give me that.
And they haven't even tasted the menu, or they don't know, or they're not equipped with the selling language or the lexicon to do so. Yeah. Look, I hear you, and I mean, look, one of the things I talk about, I get invited to participate, and do you want to spend on ad space, and do you want to buy a table at this award show, and the award show tables are really expensive, and I'm like, I would rather give that 10,000 dirhams in a heartbeat to either buying better ingredients or to my staff. So spend money on ingredients and people, and the rest is sort of irrelevant, honestly. I think Dubai is one of the markets where, as we become saturated with restaurants, what makes us stand out is ingredients and people. There are tons of beautiful restaurants, I agree, in the city and all over the world that are beautiful to dine in and fall totally, and that are mediocre. You know, and mediocrity is a really tough thing to fight, because if it's bad, someone complains, and a manager should, or an owner should, take responsibility, turn the experience around. If it's great, there's nothing really to do except ensure them to come back. But if it's meh, those are the people you lose. They're ghosts on our radar. We have no way to find out how to get them back in. So mediocrity is the most terrifying element to me, because there's no way to catch those people.
So this one leads us on to quite an interesting topic then. So obviously investing, like you've got the awards, and the way they go nowadays, like you say, is, you know, the highest sponsor you pay, the best award you'll get, right? So
I don't want to draw that correlation, but I think it helps, you know.
But if we talk about influencers, then if you can give us your opinion on influencers, and because it's one thing that we hear all the time, especially, I mean, you've obviously worked with Dubai Eye and many radio shows across Dubai, and discussed different panels, and some of these discussions that come up are, you know, what's the opinion on influencers? Because there was one restaurateur that had a message from an influencer saying, you know, if you give me free meal, I'll promote your place, blah blah blah, and it just created absolute chaos. So I'm guessing your opinion may be the same, but what's your opinion?
No, I mean, I'm somewhere in between. I'm not so upset to give away free food necessarily, although I think you do a disservice to your audience. So let me depoliticize it. Let's say that I was an influencer, and I want to become an expert on, let's pick something that's not food related. They want to trust that I'm an expert on sport. If the owner of a team pays me off to evaluate athletes, doesn't that skew my perception? So if the meal's free, the entire customer journey, the way that you order, the order of operations on the transaction, your level of criticalness changes. So I want to see what people order in a vacuum without any external influences. I'm very interested, anybody who pays has my full and utter attention. Always. You have a right. You worked hard for that money. Let us work hard to show you it was worth it. But I think I don't believe in paying influencers to come and giving free meals. I don't mind getting people's opinions on free meals. Obviously, if it's an influencer with a decent reach, I understand that. But I want to pay influencers that are relevant to the audience I'm trying to speak to. So would I pay somebody who is, you know, particularly entrenched in the fashion business? No. I want people who are nutrition influencers, fitness influencers, food bakers and cooks in their own right. Then I'm very interested. But No, I'm not. No business owner says, yes, I love giving away free stuff. It's my favorite. No, of course not. It is necessary. It totally does work. I'm not going to get so militant like some restaurateurs and say, oh, it's, it is what it is. It's like complaining about taxes. It's just a tax. So I'm going to have to pay VAT, I'm going to have to pay taxes, I have to pay registration fees, I have to pay influencers to reach a larger audience, and I don't mind that. But there are certain things about the way that we built this restaurant, Kismet, to make it democratic so people can choose based on their preference. All of our cocktails are exactly the same price. Why did I do that? Because I want people to shop with their preference, not with their wallet. And I made it specifically affordable. I made it shareable so that people could have more than one dish and make a decision and form an opinion, fall in love with certain things and be critical of other things on purpose. But I'm a true restaurateur in that sense, and that's what I believe in.
Nice. So we've discussed New York, so now we move on to Dubai. When did you move to Dubai, and how long ago was it, and what was the kind of main decision factor behind it?
It was 2008 or 2009 at New Year's, so it was like just in January, so I guess it's almost 10 years ago now. I moved out here because I think, look, I had potential job prospects in Europe. I come from New York, so I think it would have been not easy, but at the time it was possible for me to find a gig there. But I think if you really want to know how good you are at something, go somewhere where it's hard, where you don't have any connections, where you don't have any advantages, where the language is not your own, where you're not a citizen, where you didn't grow up there, where you can't lean on friends and family to help. And that's how you figure out really how good you are. You want to figure out how good you are? Go to a desert. And figure out how to make it rain. And I think that was sort of the impetus. There was also the element that, Dubai and the GCC is developing more hospitality as a business investment per square foot more than any other place in the world. So that all of those factors, made it enticing. And didn't work out, I go back and live on my mom's couch. It works out, I buy my own couch.
Yeah, of course. And how much did you know about Dubai prior to moving here?
Very little. Really very little. I had never been out here. I mean, I knew all of the ridiculous stereotypes that everyone, like everything from you get arrested for looking at a girl on the beach to everyone gets a Ferrari and a free Rolex. I mean, it was the list of every possible classic stereotype that every expat assumes is true and isn't. Is what I got off of the A380 boat with, all of them were wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because for me as well, it was another thing because I just left, obviously, the restaurant industry. I just got into construction and I was very much a bit and then I was like, right, let's just go to Dubai. I'd only seen one picture from 2007 to 2014 and see the progress of how,
which is crazy.
How much it grown. I thought, could be a cool place to go.
Seems like they're spending money on construction. Exactly. Should probably go out there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I first led to Dubai. But in terms of your working career here, then, so talk us through when you landed in Dubai. How did you go about obviously finding opportunities in businesses? Yeah,
I mean, look, I think like many people who come out here. I mean, first I came out of New York, thought I was the hottest thing ever, got humbled very quickly, went through a ton of jobs with employers that were terrible and employers that were great, but it was the wrong fit for me, and kind of made every cyclical mistake that most people in our business make here, which is first they take a job to get their foot on the ground, then they realize they're getting worked too hard and take a very high paying job, which is actually 4 jobs in one and not really a job, and they fail at that and then go back, and either they oscillate between those two opportunities of a high paying job that is unachievable and a low paying job where they feel underappreciated, and you bounce back between those ideas until you break the cycle and decide, forget how long I want to be here. Forget my shelf life intrinsically as an expat. And I hate that word. Who would I want to work for 20 years? Because Dubai as an investment is a long-term game. If you're not going to spend 10 years here, the only thing that you're going to have is the end of service cover your credit card bills and walk out empty-handed. That's it. You're going to rack up debt. You're going to feel pressured to live well because you convinced all of your friends back home that you were going to, be the glorious it's all these memes about how like what I tell my friends versus reality, and it's totally true. It's laughably true. And so when I came out here, I worked for there was a Japanese restaurant that was opening up in London. They wanted me to come there. It's called Oku. It's no longer open, unfortunately. Then I took a job with Jumeirah Group, which was really great for me, even though it was kind of a safer choice from independent restaurants. Working for big companies in a new market when you're moving to a new is the best thing you can do, because it teaches you about large machines, the way that they work. And you should always work for large companies towards the beginning of your career, and then get smaller and more boutique and more entrepreneurial.
Understand the processes, procedures,
So I really enjoyed working for Jumeirah Group and the restaurant group. Then I transitioned and did something with food trucks at the time, which was all the rage about 5-6 years ago. Then did a couple of independent restaurants. Then I opened up some of my own places. Those did okay, sold back to Emor. And then I went to go work for, and I took this sort of director's job at Baker and Spice for the region. And that's sort of been a dialogue.
How did that relationship first happen? Did you know them already, or was it something?
I did know them. The founder of the company was this incredible woman, and I always liken her to this idea. Imagine if every great tennis player over the last 20 years had one coach. That was her. So like, she spawned a generation of really successful, super well-known chefs. But she, in her own right, was not necessarily well-known. And so she was a good mentor, and when she decided after 35 years in the restaurant business between the UK and here, that she wanted to just retire, she literally called me up and said, stop whatever you're doing, I have a job for you. And then I came in and she said, I'm leaving in a week, do you want to take the company?
Wow.
And it was literally like that. So I flew out to meet with her partners who are based in Kuwait, and went through the formal interview process, and we hit it off, and that's it. And that's fast forward 5 years.
Wow.
Or 4 years, 4.5, I think now.
And then on top of obviously what you're doing at the moment with Baker and Spice, you're also having your own farmers market.
Yeah, so Baker and Spice and the woman who founded Baker and Spice was very passionate about sustainability and farm-to-table cooking, and well before it was in vogue. This was, she started pushing this in '95, and so in many ways she is the founder of a lot of what I see today in the UK and a lot of what we see around the world. It's actually kind of incredible. But she effectively started this farmers market, moved it to Emirates Towers, at the base of Emirates Towers for many years, and now it's in Business Bay. We started out with a couple farmers, 3 or 4, with a catalog of 5 or 6 vegetables. Now we have 26 stands, food artisans, craftsmen. It really is the only farmers market in Dubai. People love to use that word, not understanding what it means, but we have actual farmers based here in the UAE, selling direct. They don't pay rent. It's not for profit initiative. You can buy it directly from them. It's much better quality, and it's about a quarter of the price.
Yeah, very nice. So in terms of the produce that you use for your restaurants, you always look locally before even...
Absolutely. I mean, just from a seafood perspective, we don't use any non-local seafood. You'll never find salmon that's not grown here in the UAE. It wasn't until this year that we finally found an organic, sustainable fish farm that's based in Ajman that was doing salmon, and this is the first year we put it on in 10 years. But until then, it's all local seafood. So if you're eating it, it was in the ocean a day ago.
It's rare to find that nowadays.
Very rare. And the strange thing is it's cheaper and better. So I'm not sure what other restaurants are waiting on, but I remember this one distinct example working in a hotel where there was a stencil that we were given as cooks when we're doing the receiving. And the receiving, for those of you who don't know, in the industry means it's your job to make sure that everything that the supplier sent is on the order list. And it's very tedious, and it's always annoying, and it's always for whoever the lowest ranking cook is in the kitchen to do receiving. And we used to have a stencil for fruit and vegetables, and so and it was a cutout. It was like a plastic ring. And if the tomato didn't fit through the tomato ring, we had to reject it. It wasn't about quality or size or provenance. It's just about whether it fit through a plastic ring, so that we could industrialize the entire cooking process as much as possible. And I remember thinking how ridiculous that was, because we were throwing away tons of great stuff. That is so counterintuitive to the way that we cook at Baker and Spice, and I think is counterintuitive to the way people should be eating.
And so with farmers market, how often can Like where can we find it?
It's every Friday and Saturday in Business Bay. Sadly, we've just closed down for the season, so it's during the growing season. We wait for the farmers to tell us when to open. It's usually between September to October, and we usually close up a couple weeks before May when it gets a little bit too toasty for people.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of the farming, then, so locally, I know obviously the weather conditions have changed dramatically over the last few years, which is obviously going to help with the farming conditions. But in terms of, say, through the summer, like for people that have not been here and that are listening in, you know, Dubai will reach up to 50 degrees in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And that's obviously not great for farming. So
certainly not.
Throughout the summer periods, what do you do to counteract, obviously bringing in fresh produce to local farming?
Well, I mean, look, the good news is that the UAE has been very forward-thinking, actually, agriculturally, and has invested a ton in greenhouse growing. And the truth is, while it's 50 degrees in the city, it's closer to 35, even 40 outside in the town. Concrete, glass, as you know, in construction business, absorbs and radiates heat. It absorbs it during the day and releases it at night, which is why sometimes it feels hotter at night than it does during the day. So that's been, you know, like, it's not as hot necessarily, but I've heard these statistics, like by 2035, it'll never dip below 35 or something like that. I don't know, that'll be tough. For now, our business, the growing season has lasted long, and certain fruits and vegetables require abundant sunshine. But what we do is, you know, we'll reach into places like Turkey and Lebanon. Syria grows great fruits and vegetables and is recovering slowly from a very long and painful civil war. Egypt is an amazing exporter of stone fruits in the summer. So we'll still stay within region. You know, we're not getting blueberries from Chile and avocados from California and, you know, I don't know, plums from South Africa. We're really trying to focus on as much as possible and as close as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And so outside of those three elements, so outside of Baker and Spice, outside of Kismet, outside of Farmers Market, we also have the opposite kitchen as well.
Yeah.
Hang on, do you have a twin or any duplicates that you're out managing your other roles? Or?
No, I wish I did. Although I'd probably be annoyed with all the mistakes he makes because they're mine. But the truth is, the opposite kitchen, you know, when you go to culinary school, a lot of my culinary school students that I went to school with went on to do much cooler jobs than me and be very, very much more successful than I am or was, or maybe even will be. But I have good friends in Copenhagen that are cooking, and I don't know, I mean, Copenhagen is a big culinary center right now. A lot of the top world restaurants, a lot of the top Michelin, San Pellegrino restaurants are in Denmark. They're very forward thinking in terms of food sourcing and foraging. And the interesting thing is that Denmark, to a great extent, doesn't have a lot of variety. It's a lot of new Nordic cuisine. They don't have a lot of Arabic cuisine. They don't have a lot of good, like, you never know how good, did you ever know how good Lebanese food was until you moved out here?
Yeah.
Right, like I think about the Indian food I used to eat back home or even in the UK, it's nothing compared to what's here. Just the spices, the freshness. So we wanted to try and bring a little bit of that, so we did our first pop-up where we brought all of the cooks from Baker and Spice, about 18 cooks, fabric, pillows, an entire build-up majlis, which we shipped over there for Ramadan and did a 10-day pop-up for Ramadan in the middle of the meatpacking district in Copenhagen. And it was, we expected to lose money, maybe break even. It was sold out every single night. People loved it. People came back 2 or 3 times. And it was all distinct dishes from different MENA countries. We had one dish from Morocco, one from Algeria, one from Tunisia, one from Lebanon, one from Syria. And we did this entire kind of like Arabic themed or MENA themed pop-up, and people got really excited about it. And so we said, you know what, this idea of bringing opposites together is something we need to explore more. So we did the opposite kitchen, and we decided to move forward with that. Recently, we concluded our last opposite kitchen pop-up, which was here in Kismet, where we did a Nordic pop-up for 5 days, also sold out. And you know what we did is we catered to the idea that people far away from home miss food from home. So interestingly, the one in Copenhagen was well attended by Arab expats, and here obviously was very well attended by Nordic expats. So we had people from Sweden and Norway and Finland and Denmark coming here and bringing people that either their spouses or their partners or people they work with to come and try original Nordic food, which is hard to find here. Look, I love the idea of collaboration. I think independent restaurants, for the most part, in this city have a very adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
There's very much this idea of like, everyone's my competition, I hate you, don't talk to my staff, don't talk to my, and I don't buy it. I think it's all crap. I want people to buy like me, I want people to treat staff like me, I want people to cook, I want that healthy competition. And so Opposite Kitchen becomes a vehicle for us to collaborate and have restaurants come and try, make experiments here.
So tell us then, so how do you come up with your ideas?
Look, I mean, I'm a pretty early riser. I love exercise in the morning, but that's actually not how I come up with my ideas. I always tell people I've been kickboxing for a while, so I'm a decent cook and a bad kickboxer. Look, I think all kind of good ideas when it comes to any sort of business to a great extent come from problems. I was just on an airplane with my fiance, and she was rummaging through this small pouch with all of her jewelry, and I was like getting so frustrated for her because she couldn't find anything in there. And I was like, why has no one invented a better travel jewelry box? Yeah. Like, let's do something that's magnetized and chipped so you can find it with, RDFI and all of this stuff. And in the end, she just wanted a pouch. But I think that why we do anything has to come from intrinsically how to solve an existing problem. And I think if you really want a business that's sustainable and you want to try and force a good idea, don't do it for the sake of profiteering or capitalizing on something that's missing. You really want to do it because you're trying to solve a specific problem. It doesn't have to be like, global warming or famine. It could be something much smaller, like there's no good casual place to eat downtown.
Yeah.
It could be literally as simple as that. And I think that's usually where I get my best ideas from, as a byproduct of a problem I'm annoyed with.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I'm going to go and think about an idea and try and sort of force inspiration. Inspiration usually is an afterthought of frustration.
Yeah.
If I'm annoyed by something that's built or a system, I'm like, how do I make that better? Rather than trying to sort of conceive something from nothing.
Yeah. So when we've talked a lot about the past now, so let's talk a little bit about the future. So if we talk in a few years' time, like what goals do you have for yourself, for your brands? What does the future hold for you?
I mean, look, I think we all know it's a very tough restaurant market right now, so I think survival is a big thing for us. This restaurant just opened up in December, so for me, I just kind of want to survive for the next year.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And I guess the second thing would be to continue to create opportunities for my team to develop, and I think that's the great mark of success to a great extent. I love this idea. If I convince somebody to go into the restaurant business, because I'm passionate about it, they become kind of like my kid. And if they convince somebody else, that's like my grandkid.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing I can focus on for the future is trying to rack up as many hospitality grandkids as possible.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is a good currency for success in our business.
Fantastic. And on a final note, what we're trying to do is we're trying to direct this to, the young people entering the market, or the people that are sitting in their job wishing, oh my God, I wish I had Andre's job.
Oh my God. You can have it. You can have it right now.
Yeah.
It's yours. Just show up tomorrow morning.
But no, on a serious note, what advice would you give somebody wanting to enter either this industry, start their own business, take over somebody's business? Like, what would be the best advice you could give them?
Look, if I could pick 3 salient points, I think the first thing is forego the academics in exchange for the practical. So don't worry about culinary school or restaurant business school or any of the academic process. Get and soak up as much experience practically as you can. Find out who is doing what you want to do the best in the world, literally, and go do it. And it's a great luxury to travel in our business, and for those who can and have the ability, passport-wise or visa-wise, to go do so. If not, find out who's doing what you want to do the best in your city, and literally just go work with them as much as possible. And the second thing I would say is you'll know when to leave and go to the next thing, because it's important that you jump around at the beginning of your career. The minute you stop learning, you leave. It's not necessarily about how much you're getting paid, or the job security, or the risk of leaving. Make sure that your currency is experience. That's the first stage of your career. And the third thing is make sure that you choose somebody based on who you would want to work with. Not the title, not the role, not how cool the uniforms are, or the ability to network. Pick people you want to work with for 20 years, and you'll do well. I think to a great extent, and I've mentioned this before, you should always try and avoid shortcuts. They just don't work in this business. They just don't pay off. Fall in love with your craft. Really focus on it. Dedicate your time to it. Use your free time outside of work well. Save your money spending, on cookbooks or on going to hear people speak that are, prolific in the wine business or the hotel business, nightlife business. Really fall in love with your craft. And those are the three things that I think I would have wanted to hear maybe, 5 or 10 years ago.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. It was great to meet you and hear your story. Just thanks very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.